Shalom, shalom, shalom. Thank you for tuning in with To Be Better. Always remember to study to show yourself approved and always walk strong when walking with the Most High Yah and when walking with Yahushua Hamashiach. Now, I'm hopping on here today uh, because I'm doing a Bible study on scripture study on uh, the death and resurrection of Hamashiach, mainly focusing on the resurrection. Now, I know through the brands it's always been taught that Hamashiach has been in the grave for 3 days. And I was looking at what the scripture says versus what is taught. Was it 3 days later or 3 days in the grave, or was did he rose on the third day? The focus is on what is considered the third day. Is it the third day in which events supposed to have taken place, which the third day would have been his death and resurrection, or are we talking about whether or not his death and he rose 3 days later? Well, there's always something in scripture that we always have to focus on, and it's the wording. And it's what he is saying that gives us the answer that we desire. And the scripture always have a way of giving us examples of what's when it's written for how many days later after a death, and how people would like to connect that to something else when something else means completely different. Now, the, one of the things we have to know is that the scripture has a way of pointing out differences in speech and thought. For example, when the death of Miriam's brother Eleazar, which uh, which they've translated in these brands as Lazarus, it tells us in Yehochanan, meaning John 11, 17, and let me go to that. John 11, 17. This is where uh, we come to where Hamashiach shows up days after the death of uh, Eleazar, also known as Lazarus through Greek translation. All right, and it says, then when Yahushua came, he found that he had lain in the grave 4 days already. Now, you, what I want you to focus on is they've given us 4 days, how long he's been in the grave. Now, whenever we look at Hamashiach speaking, when he speaks about his death and resurrection, they never give us how many days later. All he says is the third day. And here's where the study comes in, and why I say it's always important to study to show yourself approved unto the Most High Yah, and not and so that you're not going off of carnal knowledge, but you're going off of what the instructions tell us and what the Ruach gives to us to cement it. Because when you understand it and the Ruach, which is the Most High Yah within you, He seconds that, then you know the truth. Now, let's take a look at what the scripture says when Hamashiach foretell his death. And the other things we have to look at, how did everybody else say it and what was their thought? Where you read it in Mark, whether you read it in read it in Matthew, whether you read it in John's Acts, where it's described as. So the first part I want to go to is Matthew 16:21. In Matthew 16:21, this is the first time where Hamashiach speaks about his death. Now, when we read this, we have to read everything in context of what it's saying. All right. So let's see, Matthew 16:21. From the time forth began Yahushua to show unto his Talmudim how that he must go unto Jerusalem and suffer many things of the elders and the chief priests and the scribes be killed and be raised again the third day. Right? So when we look at this, we have to understand that he's telling us what's going to happen to him that's going to take several days. And understanding that this death is the third day in which the final event is going to take place, and he will rise that same time. But if you don't believe me, well, this is why we're doing the study. This is why I want you to look at it. I'm giving you this information for you to go in to look at it yourself and give me your feedback. Show me something that I may be missing and we can discuss it. That's how we're supposed to be in this walk. Now, let's go to Matthew 17. In Matthew 17:22, this is the second time that he foretells his death and resurrection. Now, here he says, and while they abode in Galilee, Yahushua said unto them, the Son of Man, the Son of Adam, shall be betrayed into the hands of men, and they shall kill him, and the third day he shall be raised again. And they were exceedingly sorry. Now, again, look at how he's saying it. He's telling us he's going to be betrayed by the hands of men. They're going to kill him, and on the third day he shall be raised again. Now, you haven't seen anything that says 3 days later. He just says third day. But we're going to get closer into more of what he means on this third day. Now, let's go to Matthew 20, where he talks about his death uh, for the third time in Matthew. Now, for the third time in Matthew, when we go down to Matthew 20:17, Yahushua going into Jerusalem took the 12 Talmudim apart in the way and said unto them, behold, we go up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Adam shall be betrayed unto the chief priests and unto the scribes, and they shall condemn him to death, and shall deliver him to the other nations to mock, to scourge, to crucify, and the third day he shall rise again. Now, this is a big part right here. Now, the way they have given us things, it made it seem like all these things happen in one day, and it didn't. Here, Hamashiach is describing to us on the first day, the chief priest, I'm going to be betrayed unto the chief priests and to the scribes, and they shall condemn him. That's the first day. They're going to condemn him to death. That's the first day. And then he shall be delivered to other nations, meaning he's going to be delivered unto Gentiles that will mark him, that will scourge him, right? That's the second day in which things are going to take place. And they will crucify him, which would be the third day, and that day he shall rise again. Now, let's go into, let's see, Mark 9:30. All right. Mark 9:30. And he foretells his death in Mark. And see if anything changes. And they departed thence and passed through Galilee, and he would not that any man should know it. I'm reading Matthew 9:30 to 32. For he taught his Talmud and said unto him, the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of man, and they should kill him. And after that he is killed, he shall rise the third day. Right now, people will look at that and say, and believe that he's saying 3 days later. But here he's still telling them that they're going to kill him. And after he is killed, he shall rise the third day, meaning on that third day, in which all the things that they have done to him, he shall rise that day. And I'm going to get to the proof that he rose on that same day. Now, when we go to Mark 10, when we go to Mark 10 and 32 through 35, he foretells his death for a third time. And they were in the way going into Jerusalem, and Yahushua went before him. They are amazed. As they followed, they were afraid. And he took again the 12 and began to tell them what things should happen unto him. Now he's telling them what things that should happen unto them. And understanding that their mindset wasn't where Hamashiach was. They didn't want to lose him. They weren't even thinking how this would take place. They wanted this to never happen. But saying, behold, we go into Jerusalem, and the son of Adam shall be delivered unto the chief priest. Again, he's going to be betrayed. And unto the scribes, and they shall condemn him to death, and shall deliver him to the other nations. And they shall mock him, they shall scourge him, and shall spit upon him, and shall kill him. And the third day he shall rise again. Now understand, everything he is saying is not happening all on the same day. These are all things that happening days apart from each other. Now he continues to say this in Luke. He continues to say this in, uh, uh, yeah, he continues to say this in Luke, the same thing over and over again. When we go into Luke 18, we go to 18:31. Then he took unto him the 12 and said unto them, behold, we go to Jerusalem, and all things that are written by the prophets concerning the Son of Adam shall be accomplished. For he shall be delivered unto the nations, one, and shall be mocked, and spitefully entreated, spit on. All of that is happening in one day. And he shall be scourged, and they shall scourge him and put him to death. These are things that's going to be happening in between, and the third day he shall rise again. And they shall and they understood none of these things. This saying was hid from them, neither knew they the things which were spoken. They didn't understand it. Even to this day, they still don't understand it. So they go with off what they think on their carnal mind, saying it was 3 days later. However, we're going to go to some verses to prove um, the direction that I'm going, that he rose on the third day. The third day meaning the same day in which he was killed. Now, when we go into Matthew 27, When we go into Matthew 27, we go down to 62. Um, Now, we're going to, well, I was thinking about reading this whole thing, but there are some areas in which I want you to focus on. Actually, before we go to uh, 27, I need to go a couple days early. But no, we're here. So when we look at this, might go to 26. All right, here's something that I want you to focus on. And it came to pass in Mark 26:1, and it came to pass when Yahushua had finished all these sayings, and he said unto his Tamanin, you know that after 2 days is the feast of Pesach, and the son of Adam is betrayed to be crucified. Now, here's what I want you to be focused on. This is the feast of, this is the week of the feast of Pesach. Understand that this is the week of Pesach. Remember that. All right. So here's where in Matthew 26:14, where uh, Yehuda's, Yehuda, they call Judas, betrays the Messiah. All right. Then one of the 12, called Yehuda Icarot, went unto the chief priest and said unto him, what will you give me, and I will deliver unto you? And they covenanted, covenanted with him for 30 pieces of silver, and from the time he saw opportunity to betray him. Now, before the feast of uh, Matzah drew on, the Talmud came unto Yahushua, saying unto him, where were you that we prepare for you to eat the Pesach? Now understand that the feast of Matzah happens the very next day after Pesach. Understand that. Now here's where he's telling them to go into the city. You're going to see a man. He's going to have a donkey. He's going to have the place in which they will go and eat the Pesach. All right. Here's where he's telling the time is at hand. I will keep the Pesach at your house with my Talmudim, so on and so on. And he talks about the one who dips his hand with him on the dish shall betray him. And of course, we know that it was Yahuda. All right. And then we know that 26 to 29, they had the supper to renew the covenant. And that's another story. And he talks to Peter and he's telling him about his denial. Now, when we come down to 26:36, this is where Hamashiach is prayed. When we get down to 46, this is where he behold he is he the hand at hand. This is where he's going to be betrayed. Now, and while yet spoke, this is 26:47. While he yet spoke, lo, Yehuda, one of the 12, came, and with him a great multitude with swords and staves, and from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now he that betrayed him gave them a sign, saying, whomever I shall kiss, that same is he. Hold him fast. So now understand, this is going on during the feast of Pesach, right? Because we already gave it, the clues was the Pesach, the clues were Feast of Matzah. All right. So then we know what happened in that, right? So now he's being betrayed. Prophecy is being fulfilled, and things are being portrayed. Um, Now, they that had laid hold of Yahushua led him away to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the scribes and the elders were assembled. But Kepha followed him afar off unto the high priest's palace, and went in, sat with the servants to see the end. And now the chief priests and the elders and all the councils sought false witnesses against Yahushua to put him to death. Right? And here's where they're all accusing him and all this stuff, so on and so on. And prophecy is being fulfilled, and it goes on to Kepha being um, uh, Kepha denying Hamashiach. Now, when the morning was come, now understand, when they did this, uh, they said that they cannot kill him on the Pesach, because if they go into the judgment hall, they would be uh, defiled. But they took him on the Pesach. And then the following morning, which starts the Feast of Matzah, here's where they deliver him to Pilate. When the morning was come, all the chief priests and the elders and the people took counsel against Yahushua to put him to death. And when they had bound him, they led him away and delivered him to Pontius Pilate, the governor. Okay, Yehuda hangs himself. Hamashiach goes before Pilate. Uh, Now, take note that the crowd chooses Barabbas, right? Now, take note of this. He said, now at the feast, at that feast, meaning Pesach, at Matthew 27:15, the governor was wont to release unto the people a prisoner, whom they would, and they had then a notable prisoner called Barabbas. Therefore, when they were gathered together, Pilate said unto them, Whom will you, uh, whom will ye that I release unto you, Barabbas or Yahushua, which is called Mashiach? Now, this is done the day after Pesach, the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Now, also, we know that at the same time, uh, he was also taken to another place to Harold, who wanted all this stuff, and then taken back to Pilate. Right now, when Pilate saw and prevailed nothing, but for Matthew 27:24, revealed nothing, but rather a tumult was made. He took water, washed his hands of it before the multitude, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this just person. Uh, See you to it. Then answered all the people and said, His blood will be on them and on their children. Then released Barabbas unto them, and when he had scourged Yahushua, he delivered him to be crucified. This he's also being uh, mocked at the same time. Now, all of this stuff was taken in one day. Now, the crucifixion, this is where it starts on the third day. Because after they did all the marking, they took his robe and they did all that, all of the choosing of who to release and beating him and all that stuff, that was done on the second day. Now, the crucifixion, this goes into the third day. And as they came out, they found a man from Syrian Simeon and by the name, and they compared to bear his cross. And when they were come to a place called uh, Golgotha, that is to say, a place of a skull, and they gave him vinegar to drink, so on and so on. We know all of that stuff. And then we go into the death of Hamashiach, going down all the way to, in which here's the focus on in Matthew. And Matthew 27, when the evening was come, and there came a rich man of Ramah named Joseph, also himself was Yahushua Talmud. Uh, he went to Pilate, begged for the body of Hamashiach, in which they did eventually gave unto him, and they laid him in the new tomb, and which had hewed out the rock and rolled a great stone on the door of the sepulchre and departed. And there was Miriam of Migdol and the other Miriam sitting over against the sepulchre. Now, the next day, that followed the day of preparation, the chief priests and Pharisee came together unto Pilate, saying, Sir, we remember that the deceiver said while he yet was alive, after 3 days I will rise again. Now, their carnal thinking is that he said he's going to rise 3 days later. All he said was the third day I was going to rise. They don't know whether it's 3 days later because they don't understand, just like the Talmudim don't understand what third day it is, right? And then uh, they had somebody set watch and all that stuff. And then we go into now, but late in the day of the Sabbath. Now, when we go into the other verses, um, you will see that the connection between the Sabbath, the day of the crucifixion, and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Now, if you follow the Enoch calendar, you will know that the Feast of Pesach starts on a Wednesday, and then you will have Thursday, Friday, and then it goes into Shabbat. All right. Now, here's something that you should take note of. They said, but late in the day of the Sabbath, as it began to grow light, to that one Sabbath to come Miriam of Magdalene and the other Miriam, and behold the sepulchre. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of Yahweh descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat upon it. His countenance was like lightning, his raiment was white as snow, and for fear of him, the garters did shake and became a dead man. Now understand, this is the very next day. Now to verify this, let's go on over to Luke. We can go to Luke uh, 22, Luke 22 and 1, approaching now the feast of the peace, the now the feast of Pesach week, which is said to be Pesach. All right. This is when they're plotting during that week of Pesach. Okay, we know 20 Luke 22, 3 to 6. This is where he's being betrayed. Now, Luke 22, 7, at the beginning of the daylight hours of Pesach week, when the Pesach must be killed, he sent Kepha and Yochanan, what we discussed in Mark in Matthew's of where they're going to go eat and do the supper. Now, they go through all this telling and all that stuff, and he tells Peter about his denial and stuff like that. So when we get down to Luke, let me see, we're still in the Pesach time frame here. We're still in the Pesach all the way up to the betrayer. Now, let me see, where is it at? Mount of Olives, prayed. Yep, began the multitude, 12 of Yahushua. Now, we're going into this. They took him at night uh, after they've had their Pesach meal. All of Luke 22 verifies the same thing, right? And they're mocking him. Peter denies him, and he goes before the council. The council. And as soon as it was day, the elders of the chief priests and the scribes came together and led him into their council, saying, Are you Hamashiach? Tell us. And he said unto them, if I tell you, you will not believe me, so on and so on. So this, when they say the next day, this is talking about early in the morning, the same thing in which we saw in Matthew. Now, when we go to 23, Luke 23, and we head down to, we see all this stuff that's going through Pilate. We see that he's been sent to Herod. When you look at 23 to 6 to 17, he's taken to Herod and brought back to Pilate when we get to 23:18. But we're going to continue to scroll down because he sentenced to death and by crucifixion and all that stuff. But we're going to go down a little bit and focus around 23:54. Now, this is something that is key that I don't think people paid attention to. And that day was the preparation and the Sabbath drew on. Now, understand, this is where the burial is. We're talking about the death, and we're going into the death is the day of preparation, which is Yom 6. We're talking about like Friday for how we understand it today, and we know that the seventh day is Saturday, the Sabbath. Here he says, and that day was the preparation, and the Sabbath drew on. That means they put him in the sepulcher on the Sabbath, on the day, on the preparation day, and they went into the Sabbath. Okay. And then it goes into at 55, and the woman also, which came with him from Galilee, followed after beheld the sepulchre and how his body was laid, and they returned, prepared spices and ointments, and rested the Sabbath according to the commandment. Now they rested during the day part of the Sabbath. Now let's go into Luke 24. And now, on that one Sabbath, very early in the morning, in some writings it would say before the dawn of the first day of the week, they came to the sepulchre, bringing the spices which they prepared and certain others with them. And they found the stone rolled away from the sepulchre already. Look at the date. They said on that one Sabbath, meaning they were already in the Sabbath in which we were before. We're not talking about a week later. We're talking about the very next day. We're talking about before the rise of the sun of the first day. That means after somewhere 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, 4, maybe 5 o'clock in the morning, he was already risen. Now, let's say, and they entered in and found not the body of Adonai Yahushua. And it came to pass, as they were much perplexed thereabout, behold, two men stood by them in shining garments, and as they were afraid and bowed down their faces to the earth, they said unto them, why seek ye the living among the dead? He is not here, but is risen. Remember how he spoke unto you when he was yet in Galilee, saying, the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful man. 1, be crucified. 2, the third day, the Sabbath, before the rise of the first day of the week, he shall rise the third day, rise again. And they remembered his words and returned from the sepulchre and told all these things unto the 11 and to the rest of them. Now, let's go down to John because John has some great details as well. So when we go to John, let's see, 13. This talks about again more intel on the things that was happening during the day of the Pesach, right? Everything that was going on at the table, all before the betrayal, so on and so on. Now, when we go into, let's say, John 18, now we're talking about the betrayal of Hamashiach. Now, we've read earlier that we're in the week of the feast of the Pesach. Now, we're going to come to the point to where they say they cannot kill him on the Pesach. Now, we've read on the other one showing that the next day, the next morning, which starts the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the first day of Feast of Unleavened Bread, that they were taking him to be crucified. They were taking him to Herod. They was taking him to Pilate, so on and so on. But uh, ver- let's go ahead and verify this by scripture, which we've already had. So when we go down to 1828, John 18:28. And then led they Yahushua from Caiaphas unto the hall of judgment. And it was early. And they themselves went not into the judgment hall, lest they should be defiled. But they that mit, that but they that they might eat the Pesach. This is before they took him to Pilate. This is because if they would have went, if the with what they are doing, and they would have went into the judgment hall, they would have been defiled when they did all these accusations because it was still the feast of Pesach. So what they did was they took him to a different place and judged him on the night of the Pesach. Stay with me. They judged him on the night of the Pesach. Pilate then went on to them and said, "What accusation?" Now, this is going into the next morning when Pilate goes in and asks them, "What is the accusation against this man?" Right? Now, when we get to, let's say, John 19:31, then said Pilate, "Take you him and judge him according to your law." When Yahudi, the Yahudim therefore said unto him, "It is not lawful for us to put away a man to death, that the saying of Yahushua might be fulfilled, which he spoke significantly what death he should die." And then we're going into, Pilate talking to Yahushua, Hamashiach. Then we're going to go into uh, John 19. And this is where um, Hamashiach is to be delivered, to be crucified. When we go to in 19, what I wanted to focus on was, now, understand again, this is going into the next day after they judged him, after they judged him themselves. This is the night of the Pesach in which they took Hamashiach. Again, they didn't want to go into the judgment hall because they would have been defiled. They knew what they were doing was wrong. And they knew that they would cause an uproar if they killed him on the Pesach. Now, the very next day, they take him to uh, Pilate, which is the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Now, we can go down to John 19:31. 19:31, this is where he's being pierced. It was the reason I came down here. Um, why did I come to 1931? And the Yahudim, therefore, because it was, here's what I want you to see. Now, the Yahudim, therefore, because it was the preparation day, this again shows us that they took Hamashiach the night of the Pesach, the night of Pesach, Passover. The very next day, they took him to Pilate, they took him to Herod. Then they brought him back to uh, Pilate to be judged, to be killed. Now, therefore, here it is, because it was the preparation. When they say preparation, they're talking about the day before the Sabbath. And it was telling him, because this is Friday, the day before the Sabbath, the body should not remain upon the cross on the Sabbath, for the Sabbath was a high day. And they besought Pilate that their legs might be broken and that they might be taken away. This is important clues unto us, being the remnant. For our studies, these are the clues unto us. Now, we know that they took them on the Pesach. We know that this is during the first day of unleavened bread. And now we're in the day of preparation, going into the third day. All right. Now, here I wanted to point out, because it was the preparation, that means that they pierced his side. They had him on that tree the day before the Sabbath. All right. Now, and if you've seen the other video, you'll understand what how filthy this was when they gave him vinegar to drink. But when you see his death, now now we know that they didn't break his legs on this. Now after, yeah, so after this, Joseph of Ramah, being a Talmudin of Yahushua, came and got his body, gave put him in the grave, so on and so on. Right now, took they the body of Yahushua, wounded in the linen clothes with spices, as the manner of a Yahudim is to be buried. Right now, 1942. John 1942. There laid they Yahushua, therefore, because of the Yahudim, preparation day for the sepulchre was nigh at hand. That means that they had to get him in there before sundown, before the start of the Sabbath. Before the start of the Sabbath, he was taken, he was judged on day one. He was taken by he was taken by the Yahudim on day one. They marked him, they scourged him. Day two, he was going back and forth to Herod and to Pilate. And day three, they put him to death. Now, let's go into John 20. I wanted to John 20 and 21. 20 and 1. Now on the certain Sabbath, this is going into the next day, came Miriam of Migdol early. Then it was yet dark unto the sepulchre. That means before the sunrise of the first day of the week, which will be a Sunday, unto the sculpture, and saw the stone taken away from the sepulchre. They saw this on the Sabbath, that the stone was already taken away early in the morning. We just laid out the day he was taken, all the things that would be done to him, the judgment of being handed over to the Gentiles, being put to death on the preparation day, and now we're going into the Sabbath. Then she ran and came unto Simon, uh, own Kepha, and the other time, and to tell him of whom Yahushua loved, and said unto him, they have taken away Adonai out of the sepulchre, and we know not where they have laid him. He's already gone. Now, here's something that I want you to see. Let me see. Let me see. Uh, Let me see. Where? Not this verse. because this is where Miriam stood at the sepulchre weeping, and as she wept, she stooped down and looked into the sepulchre, two angels, and here's where she talks to Hamashiach. But I wanted to go to Luke 22, 22 and 24. This verifies everything else that I was saying. Again, approaching now the feast of Pesach week, which is said to be the Pesach. This is where everything is starting. Satan enters Yehuda during the feast of Pesach. He's having the dinner with them. He's going in there talking to them, say who's going to brigade it. He tells Peter about Kepha, he's being denied, and the scriptures must be fulfilled, so on and so on. Here comes the betrayal. The betrayal happens the night of Pesach. Of course, Peter denies them, he gets mocked, so on and so on the very next day. And then here, just before, as soon as it was day, the elder of the people, the chief priests, and the scribes came together and led him into the council, saying, "Are you Hamashiach?" Now we're still going into the same thing. They took him. Here they are about to judge him and do all this stuff to him, so on and so on. And after this, as the day goes on, they take him to Pilate, then they take him to Herod, then they bring him back to Pilate. And of course, remember, we've read before, they cried out all at once, saying, "Away with this man, release us unto us Barabbas, who for a certain sedition made the city, and for murder was cast into prison." Pilate, therefore, willing to release Yahushua, spoke again to them, but they cried, "Crucify him, crucify him." Remember, reread uh, earlier, and let's go back up to 23:17. For the necessity he must release one unto them at the feast. At the feast. What feast are we talking about? Pesach. And then the very next day, which we have read, the very next day starts the feast of unleavened bread. Now we're in Thursday when all these things, Yom 4, uh, Yom 5, when all these things are happening to him with Pilate, so on and so on. And then it goes into the crucifixion of Hamashiach, where they end up putting him on the tree. Now, some more clues. And behold, a man named Joseph counted, he stood and was a good man and just. And they argued about the body, so on and so on, because the body cannot be held up on the Sabbath. So when you go down to 23, 2054, and that day was the preparation, and the Sabbath drew on. They took him and put him in the sepulcher the day before the Sabbath. And now they're going into the Sabbath, and they returned and prepared spices and ointment and rested the Sabbath according to the commandment. Now they're resting during the day portion of the Sabbath. Now, here we go. Luke 24:1. Now, on that one Sabbath, very early in the morning, they came unto the sepulchre, bringing the spices which they had prepared, and certain others with them. And they found the stone rolled away from the sepulchre. Now, we've went through Matthew, we went through Mark, we went through John, we're in Luke, showing 3 days it took them to do these things. And to his death and resurrection, the third day is on a Shabbat, which goes right into the third day, not 3 days later, because if we're looking at them putting in themselves in the grave on preparation of Shabbat, that means that that Saturday, that Sunday, and then that Monday he should be risen. But he said the third day, which was the Sabbath, and he rose. Now, let me see where it was at, and they found the stone rolled away. They entered in, found not the body of Adonai Mashiach, and it came to pass as they were perplexed thereabout, behold, two men stood by them in a shining garment. There, he's talking to him, so on and so on. Um, Now, it was Miriam of Magdala, Yehochanan, and Miriam, the mother of Yaakov, and the other women that were with them, which told these things unto the apostles. Right? And there is another verse that uh, I'm going to have to look at later, but it, let me see, it's in, yeah, there's another verse that shows that. Um, Hamashiach was already talking to Miriam, another Miriam, uh, but while they were at the gravesite, he was already talking to another Miriam before he talked to Miriam of Magda, before he talked to the group that was uh, at the burial site. So uh, this is something that I want y'all to pay close attention to and tell me what you think. Give me your thoughts on this. For me, I think I laid it out that uh, he was taken on the night of the Pesach, which, if we understand how the Hebrew days go, the night of it starts and going into the next day. The Feast of Unleavened Bread, the first day of Feast of Unleavened Bread, is when they take him to Pontius Pilate, and they take him to Herod, and they take him back to Pilate, and the which the second day would be uh, going into the going into the third day would be the day of preparation, and going into the Sabbat, in which they crucified him, which they put him in the grave before the start of the Shabbat. And when they went early in the morning of the Shabbat, before the rise of the sun on the first day, he was risen. He was already risen. Shalom, brothers and sisters. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Give me your thoughts. Give me your opinions as we look into this word study. Always walk strong when walking with the Most High Yah.